Hello. Hello, everyone, he said, clicking to the wrong tab and therefore not sure of whether he's on screen. But I assumed that the fire crackling noise has gone away and therefore he is. Hello. Welcome to the final ZineQuest stream. ZineQuest is an open call TTRPG event on Kickstarter. It runs through the month of February this year, and we've been not only taking part in it with our own campaign, which you can find in chat any second now when I copy and paste it in, but also if you go to Kickstarter and just do a lovely search for the soft TTRPG, you will see our campaign there. We're not going to go into the full details of it. That's not what this stream is about, but yeah, check it out, see what you think. What this stream is about is picking out our favorite Kickstarter campaigns and putting them in front of you and hopefully enticing you into spending all your money on them as soon as possible. Yes. As for who we are, if we don't do the full promo thing here, but there's links below if you want to check out everything we do. We usually do actual plays. We run weekly, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, do one-shots every month, that kind of thing. You can find that information. It's all out there for you. I'm not going to waste your time with it now. I'd rather waste your time with it on the normal streams. So there we go. If you watched these before, we pick 6 campaigns. We talk about them in a very inexpert way. And generally get enthused about how great the community output is during the ZineQuest month. So, with that in mind, let's get on to the first campaign of the stream, and it's only community radio, everyone. This is something I stumbled across a while ago, and it's been kind of like floating on my list of do I include, do I not include, not because there's anything wrong with it, just because there's so many things fighting and it hasn't quite climbed out yet. But this time, I took a look at it and I thought, no, I do really like this. Let's put it in front of you. So as it says, it's a new edition of an existing TTRPG, an improv TTRPG about a strange place in the community radio station that supports it. It's no surprise that it's heavily influenced by Welcome to Night Vale. It's from Thought Crime Games. And I will just do a quick readout blurb. Your town has deep secrets, terrifying monsters, unspeakable evils, a clandestine city council making strange decrees, and a public radio station. It's for 3 to 10 people, as it says, heavily improv focused, aims to last for 1 to 2 hours. It's I think it's meant to be scenes of life in the town, but also with accompanying public radio broadcasts. There is a kind of, although it's improv, there's obviously like a heavy format around it. There's one player that's the host that kind of facilitates play, runs the local radio show, does public announcements and reports and comments, and like plays off the other sort of slice of life stuff that's being done. Rules light, procedural cues, tables, that kind of thing. If you played this kind of thing before, I'm sure you instantly know how this kind of thing works and what it'll kind of be like. The touchstone for this, it's a touchstone that people often talk about for these kind of like open improv systems, although less now than maybe when it was at the peak of its popularity a decade and a half ago. But the obvious touchstone for me here is Fiasco. I think it's very heavily reminiscent of that, but really honing down on that interesting format of one person as the radio host, everyone else like dipping in and out as people on the radio or off the radio or whatever. Yeah, it just looks really, really fun. And that, I mean, there's some other touchstones out there. Another thing I immediately thought of was the cult horror film Pontypool. Which is also based around a kind of like radio station in a town where something is going incredibly wrong. So yeah, Steve, thoughts, fears?
Well, I've been meaning to watch Pontypool for ages, so
Right.
Yeah, no, I love that. This has also been bubbling away on one of my lists as well. So I'm glad you picked it up here. Yeah, I love the idea of it. It reminds me of there's a like a website, used to be possibly a Twitter feed in the UK, Scarfolk Council.
Yeah.
You know, spoofing all of those wonderful and unsettling public awareness campaigns, sort of, God, 70s and 80s, I guess it would have been, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe even veering a bit earlier than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Scarfolk is definitely a touchstone as well, albeit one so culturally specific that I seriously doubt anyone outside of the UK would really get Scarfolk in terms of like how it exactly what it's doing. But yeah.
But there was a Netflix show as well, that the Curlian frequency, something like that. Again, radio, sort of horror tinged. Yes, radio broadcasts. It just sounds great, and I love the whole sort of improv angle of it. And yes, it has a lot of potential. I think that's definitely one I'd sit down and play.
Yeah, and like it's generally like it's such a specific conceit, and I really like games that have a really specific conceit. But it's also got that like the openness of something like Fiasco having like so many different like ways in which you can play it and ways in which you can apply yourself to it. And I know I keep going back to Fiasco with this, but it does remind me heavily of that, which is definitely a compliment. I saw like these the random D6 table stuff, and it immediately made me think of that. And honestly, at least one of my favorite ever roleplay experiences of my life was while playing Fiasco. And I think that like though, I mean, Fiasco also has a kind of focused tone in that it has that Coen Brothers sort of vibe, but each one of them tries to like each playset tries to hone in on a specific further thing. But this is building it up from the ground up, so you know exactly what you're going to get when you go into a game of community radio, presumably. I also like that they're making a second edition here, and one of the things they say is add structures and supports for a more plot-driven, possible multiple session campaign of community radio. And I love that idea. Something Fiasco doesn't do, or maybe did with a book I don't have or something like that, but not as default. Adding stations, pre-made lists of elements and settings so you can get into play of the game randomly. Yeah, just adding more stuff, I guess. I haven't played community radio before, nor have I heard of it before this, but it seems to me like I like the idea of Kickstarters that take something that's already out there and probably well known and loved by a few people, but like hopefully getting it to a wider audience, right, with a bit more of a developed edition. And I like that Kickstarters could do that as well as sort of fresh ideas, you know.
Looks great.
Very good. Okay, let's move on. We're entering now into what I'm going to call the non-system portion of this stream, in that I've kind of sandwiched a bunch of resource type stuff between systems for no reason other than just sheer coincidence. And then I went, I can call it that on the stream. So there we go. Let's take a look at Steve's first pick, the Cursed Art Pack.
Yeah, so in our previous episodes, you did keep going on about how you wanted to see bad art. Couldn't manage that.
No.
But this caught my eye. So yes, here's some cursed art, which let me get my notes up. I've actually prepared this time, which is
this is some hardcore Johnny shit right here.
Oh yes, yes.
This sort of folk horror look.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the first Kickstarter from Flying Duck Studio Lab. The artist is Francisco Lemos, and yes, it's a series of eerie images with otherworldly creatures. They sort of touch on cosmic horror, dark rituals, body horror, that sort of thing. And yes, there are strong links, the sort of themes to games like Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, liminal horror, and so on. The great thing with this is that these images are licensed as Creative Commons 4.0. So essentially, you can use these in your own games and your own, if you're producing your own zines, I guess. There are just two. You can't do NFTs, and you can't bundle them together to resell them. But I think that's great for anybody trying to put products out themselves, it's really quite a nice sort of altruistic thing to do. But in terms of, like, from my point of view, these are just great for if you're trying to come up with inspiration for your own game.
No, for sure. Like, there's a couple of like, just looking at these images, there's things that immediately leap out at me as like, like this, and I think like it definitely leaps out at me. You mentioned stuff like obviously Call of Cthulhu and Delta Green and Vaesen and things like that, and they definitely leap out to me like this is what you want to use as inspiration for something focal.
Yes.
Like it obviously in a lot of like more broad, maybe typically fantasy, but also there's horror games that do it, like games where you have like not necessarily a monster of the week feel, but like a kind of like, oh, now you're fighting 3 of these, now you're fighting 10 of them and stuff like that. This is something more where I look at these and I'm like, well, that's the thing the story is based around.
Yes.
That's a focal point. That's an artifact, or it's the great old one, or the eldritch horror that is the entire focus of the story. And for people who want that level of inspiration, like I realize that. It's been a recurring theme. If this is the first one of these streams you've watched, whether you're watching us now or watching us over on YouTube, if this is the first one you watched, there's a recurring theme of criticism could certainly be levied at us that we're just picking the campaigns we like the art of. But no, it looks great, and it's, again, we've talked about this before, like how good it is to see campaigns as part of this that aren't just here's a system zine, or like ours, here's just a setting zine, like things that are resources that are like agnostic and can be applied to multiple things. It's really good to see those things as well, even if they're like focused on a system. There's fancier stuff. I was going to reach behind me, but I don't think they are behind me. No, they're not. But things like the Mort Borg zines that were officially produced by Stockholm Cartel are like, even though they're for Mort Borg, there's very little reason you couldn't use them in your own, gothic dark fantasy thing. And that's something I love, the ability to like have a shelf full of these things and pluck them off and go, okay, I can use this, I can use that, and like use them to get your own creative urges flowing. And it goes back, the art on this is fantastic. We need more adjectives for good looking art if we're going to do any more of these streams.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on. For some reason, I have another one of yours here, Steve.
That's fine.
So let's just move on to that, shall we? Here we go.
Yes. This one caught my eye really because of the setting, 1893 Chicago World's Fair. So this is, again, I think it's the first Kickstarter for Story Games Chicago. It's a system agnostic setting zine, and it's contains a number of NPCs, factions, and 5 scenarios for your next exploration of Gilded Age Chicago. And yes, they all take inspiration, all the materials take inspiration from Gothic horror and Chicago history. Now, whenever I hear 1893 Chicago World's Fair, I don't know why. It's possibly because it was a setting for one of Supermassive's recent games on, a bunch of platforms. H.H. Holmes and the Murder Castle. So I thought, I saw the title, the image, I thought H.H. Holmes. Lo and behold, the first scenario is indeed features H.H. Holmes and a rather grim hotel. So yes, that was another tick. That's instant sort of intrigue from my point of view. I think so. Again, the reason that this leapt out at me is because it's just the setting's so evocative. The fact that the things that people saw at this fair were bizarre and weird and kind of otherworldly. So it feels like it's quite a good sort of jump-off point for, sort of blurring the lines between real world and something rather more fantastical, which could lead, could support stories you're trying to tell quite nicely. Yeah, so there's 5 scenarios. There's a whole bunch of NPCs. I forget how many precisely. But it just feels, yes, like rich with potential. So I'm quite intrigued by this one.
Yeah, I really like what you were saying there about it's interesting for a number of reasons. I have a few things to say, and I'll start out with the two that are not really anything to do with this thing in any real sense. First, I immediately knew, like when I was scrolling it down, like it popped out to me as a Chicago thing, even without reading anything, because Steve, and there's no reason for you to know this. There is a reason for me to know this, and I'll explain that in a second. But their logo there on the right is an adaptation of the Chicago flag.
Okay, yeah.
Careful observers may see that I'm wearing a wrestling shirt and will know immediately why I know what the Chicago flag looks like. That's neither here nor there for normal people. But the second thing that leads out to me, weirdly, I was reading about H.H. Holmes last week, and about all the interesting. He's one of those cases where almost the kind of notoriety and reputation has been massively ratcheted up, A, by just kind of folklore over the years, but also B, by the guy himself. There seems to be an awful lot of killers who, when caught, really try to cop for everything they didn't do, because I think what they want more than anything else is the infamy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like basically, like if you read the Wikipedia entry and a couple of other things, it sounds like he basically just killed people in a very mundane way for insurance money, like a couple of times. And they
Right.
weren't really,
Right.
they were like people who worked for him and his partners.
Hmm.
And like he didn't have a murder hotel, he didn't have crazy booby trap, like it literally all, but he said he did.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
So people went, so police at the time went, sounds right then, I guess. So, which is really interesting, but obviously the mythology of it is far more interesting. I also really like what you were saying there about how it's that kind of like at a time in which like industry and science was moving so rapidly compared to like the lifetimes of people, a time we're still in, but like everything, we're like raised to acclimate to change now in a way people weren't necessarily in those times, with like global media and stuff like that. And like it's fascinating, it's that old, like, you know, any technology advanced enough, etc., right? It's that old thing. And like when you read about a lot of the things that are happening in the late 1800s at these world's fairs, that you're absolutely right. Stuff like Tesla and Edison's like competing thing, Edison fucking electrocuting elephants and all that shit, while Tesla's over in the corner going, mine doesn't kill anything, actually, isn't that a good thing, and it's more energy efficient. And the world went, nah, we'll take the money we'll give all the money to the capitalists, thanks. Like that, but exactly that kind of thing. And like where pseudoscience, it's essentially there was no pseudoscience, because everything under the scientific bracket, if it was crazy or not, was almost considered equal validity, because it was so difficult to prove anything and then to like publish it and peer review it and all that kind of thing, that we have more now. So you had all these like really, and that carried on through the 20th century, these really wild notions. Weirdly, it brings to my mind the again, this is just related to something I was doing last week, which is listening to some Kate Bush, but like the like organone machine, and like for creating clouds and stuff, like this really weird stuff that you kind of go, how did anyone even think that? But it's such a different like zeitgeist and paradigm, and you can really feed into that. And something else that reminds me of, oddly, is and why not use this as an opportunity to push something we're going to do, really reminds me of the Yellow King, which the first part of which is based in 1890s France. And that has like that sense of, you know, the cultural and scientific explosion that was happening at that point in time in that place, and the kind of readiness of people to essentially believe in anything, whether it be spiritual or technological, and that playing a part to play in what a certain individual might be doing in taking advantage of in order to get a foothold in our reality. Anyway, we'll be running the Yellow King in a couple of months' time, so check out that. But yeah, this City of Blood and Plaster, yeah, again, agnostic, evocative, great resource. Like, you could pull lots of this stuff straight into Call of Cthulhu, right? Yeah.
Well, a bunch of systems, but yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
that sort of historic style is definitely suited to Call of Cthulhu. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Great. All right. Moving on to our next resource thing. Let's talk about Rumored Lands. Now, this is a collection of risograph printed zines featuring fantasy maps, highlighting unique locations and inspiration sparking rumors. It is from Arlen, who has created two things before. And again, this is primarily like a resource, a collection of 3 resource zines. Illustrations, story hooks, potential characters, and locations. One of the reasons I highlighted this, and I hate to be going back to the old artwork and design thing again, something I've seen a lot of, and I can imagine you, Steve, knowing more about it than me. Something we've seen a lot of in a lot of the campaigns we've picked is I've become aware of the word risograph, which I have never been aware of before. But it's
It was
funny.
new to me as well.
Yeah, lots of people seem to be doing it, and it is funny because when I look at the images, if you ask me what a risograph was before I do this stuff, I still haven't looked into it. But looking at the images, I know exactly what it is because, and again, showing my age, I feel like this was a style of printing that was more in favor, like 60s, 70s, 80s, where you had this slightly rough but thick paper type. And this kind of printing and this kind of, again, a lot of this art on this risograph stuff reminds me of like 70s, 60s and 70s, like almost slightly childlike fantasy art that you get in like kids' books of like, I don't know if they have them now, but you used to have kids' books that were like full of just weird things, like weird stories or you know what I mean, like tricks you can do and like just weirdness in general. And these really remind me of that, and I'm assuming it's a similar paper stock and that kind of thing. Regardless, Rumored Lands, again, I love the art design. I've just talked about that. This sort of stuff, fabulous, lovely. A collection of like agnostic locations and story hooks. Yeah, come on. Like who can't need those? It's fantasy based, I think. Well, and obviously the applications of that are extremely wide within the world of tabletop role playing. And also, just from like, I am someone who loves his color coding. Okay, don't ask me why. It's my brain. My brain gets excited by different colors and the coding thereof. So when you say there's 3 zines that are color themed, wrapped together in a nice band, I'm like, that just sounds like a great little artifact. That sounds like a lovely object to have. So with that in mind, that's why I put Rumored Lands in, because I was just like, yeah, that looks like something I'd really like to own and that would be really useful. Yeah.
I've got some bad news for you, Matt.
Okay, go on.
The shipping, they're only shipping the physical versions in the US.
That is a shame. That is a shame. But I would also say, like, one of the reasons why doing these streams has been fun, but also exquisite torture for me, is that I cannot afford to back anything at the moment. So all of these have. I could get this anyway, Steve. So
yeah.
that is a shame, but also understandable in the current.
Yeah, I think it's
me and Steve have been talking about this a lot recently, having paid some exorbitant shipping fees for things.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. We're in a time of global crisis, right, in terms of transport. So, and it may be about to get even worse. So,
yeah, I think it's the mark of a good Kickstarter that sort of self limits, that doesn't go overboard. That, like, as much as I would love to, and again, this was a Kickstarter that I had looked at quite carefully, so it was kind of on one of my shortlists as well. It's sort of self-limiting and making sure that you don't overextend as the Kickstarter creator, but also that I guess you don't end up causing people to have a bunch of rather surprise. And if you're sending a zine around the world and it costs more postage than it does to actually buy, there's an issue. You know, it's a problem.
Not that that is from any recent
no, of course not.
developments that we've been discussing.
No. But I for this, I love the art, I love the style, the texture especially. And yes, I did just check risograph printing. Apparently, it dates. It's only 1980s.
Oh, okay.
The first,
but I mean, that would be my childhood, so perhaps that's
yeah, okay.
dating
I guess
myself.
no, it's still my childhood. I'm not that bad. But yeah, what?
You didn't grow up in the 60s, Steve. Like,
just sometimes feels like it, you know.
Sure.
But, yeah, no, lovely. Yeah, nice resource, lovely art and lovely texture, and yeah, nice.
No, really nice. All right, we'll move on swiftly because Steve has confessed to being a boomer, so now it's we're approaching his bedtime.
Don't make me swear.
So we've got your final one here, Steve, which is quite a fortuitous coincidence for reasons I won't go into here. But also, I happen to know that one of the creators of it is in the chat. So hello. Let's talk about Metanthropes. Take it away, Steve.
Sure. Yeah, this wasn't planned. So
it genuinely wasn't. It sounds like it was, but it was a wonderful coincidence. I was already talking to the person who created this.
Yeah. So I've been looking at this again when we thought about doing these streams back at the start of February. I'd seen this pop up and had been thinking about it, and yes, I thought it was time to talk about it on stream. And it's Metanthropes. Let me again notes. Where are we? So this is an introductory zine for a new RPG by Legitimine, who happens to be in the chat, and it's basically, yes, Metanthropes are humans gifted with new powers or abilities, but they remain tethered to the frailties, passions, and flaws of their human nature. There's comprehensive game rules. It's a zine. It's an introductory thing, so you get 10 pre-made player characters, a couple of maps, and a one-shot to kick things off. It's the first Kickstarter by Legitimine Games. Here's the thing that I like about it. I think we had on the poll for which games we'd play this year. We've had a couple of superhero style games, powered games, that sort of thing on the list. I've always been a little bit sort of we tend not to play heroes on this channel. I don't think we've had many. And the idea of a straight sort of superhero game just doesn't really, I don't know quite how to relate to it. The thing with this is that it maintains sort of interesting themes that I find interesting and sort of themes that I can work with. So yes, interactions and potential conflict between Metanthropes and the rest of the world, the ideas of balance, the ideas of living with these powers, what they mean to you, and how they it's, you know, they're not just a beneficial thing. They're not just, there's plenty of scope there for as the page says, exploring themes about the price of power, the nature of morality, the complex interplay between individual agency and the collective welfare, which is a lovely sentence. So yes, it's a starting point. The big thing again about this is that it's a really ambitious project. It's not just a zine. There are Foundry modules that you can back alongside it. One of the modules is the full setting, it seems. There's an introductory module that just covers a quick start. There's a full module that covers the entire content of the game, and then there's a homebrew module that allows you to tinker with stuff and sort of go beyond, I guess. So yes, there's again a whole lot of scope there. The zine layout itself, there's a shot further down that, again, the layout looks nice and clean and easy to read, and that's quite appealing to me. But yeah, it's like a superhero game that interests me. It has a lot of depth, I think. I like the idea of the combinations of powers. I think the ones listed, there's like a block of 10 sort of powers listed there. They all have potential. They all have interesting potential that a player can sort of investigate and play with and develop. It's not just, oh, you can hit things really hard. There's a whole lot of I think.
Well, I think the notion, right, is that there's 100 powers and you kind of mix and match between selections of them, which is something that I really like. I also really like the visual design, which is why I stuck on this for a while. I love logos. Another one of my weird things, and this immediately jumped out to me as something I would enjoy browsing and sort of combining things together. But yeah, I like that combo idea. There's two immediate touchstones that leap out to me for this, and bear with me because one of them might sound weird. The first thing it reminds me of is World of Darkness, just because it's dealing with seemingly human but powered individuals who are constantly contemplating the morality of use of those powers within their world, right? And the conflict between these superpowered individuals. The other one it reminded me of, and like you, I'm not a massive fan of superpower TTRPGs. I'm not against them. I just, very few of them have leapt out at me, because for me, superpower stuff is so tied to the characters I know and love that, like, and that's a quandary, right? Like, I could get, like, I'm sure there have been multiple Marvel TTRPGs, but why would you want to play a Marvel TTRPG and not play one of the main characters? But also, why would you want to play one? It's like this thing, right? Yeah. With one exception, right? My favorite superhero TTRPG of all time, which is probably showing its age in a number of ways, as most White Wolf stuff is, because I'm apparently incapable of talking about anything but White Wolf things. But Aberrant was what I immediately thought of when I thought of this. This isn't World of Darkness. This is part of the Trinity universe they did in the late 90s and early 2000s. And in Aberrant, the whole thing is that you are super-powered individuals who may or may not have been engineered to get their superpowers, and it's all kind of unclear where the powers have actually all come from. And it does that whole, like, slightly pseudo Watchmen thing of what if superpower people in the real world, where you have, like, speaking of it earlier, you have like superpowered wrestling federations, and one of the main careers of people with superpowers is to be used as proxy mercenaries. To, like, they become the new form of proxy war, essentially. And it's got a whole morality thing. It has an insanely comprehensive set of superpowers that you can use. And it's something that this immediately started reminding me of, that and the general World of Darkness, powered individuals, but a focus on morality and how that interacts. And those are things that remind me of. And honestly, if you have listened to me for any length of time, me saying this reminds me a bit of World of Darkness and Aberrant, is not a bad thing at all. So, and those are the things that immediately leaked out to me. Yeah, you know what? We've got the person in chat, and I don't mind being proved right. There we go. Legit mine. Nice on point. World of Darkness is my main influence. Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, it's Metanthrope, the Metanthroping. So we've got that. Aberrant I actually discovered after I began development for my game, so I haven't played it, but yeah, I feel it is also close. Yeah, I think it's Aberrant is almost essentially like a super powered World of Darkness. So it would be appropriate. Yeah. Looks interesting. Any final words on this one, Steve?
Just that I think the idea of bundling the maps with it as well, and the the facility for online play. It just, yes, it feels it's there's so much stuff, content, words. I need better words. It just feels really rich, and I think.
Okay. Steve, this is the fourth one of these. This is the This is the 23rd game we've covered. You're gonna start repeating yourself. It's absolutely fine. So there we go. Lovely. Okay, let's move on to the final game zine campaign that we're covering as part of these streams. This will be the last one, as I said, because we're coming to the end of February, and a number of these campaigns will run over beyond February. It's as long as they start in February. That's the thing. But we need to draw a line somewhere, right? So we thought we'd do that. And this final one is one I actually only saw today. And I read it and went, yeah, I'm putting this one in for absolute sure. This is a TTRPG called Hellsite. It's a TTRPG stained by our time online, and it's quite high concept. It's from, and I'm sorry if I can't decompartmentalize your name probably, but Nick Hess-Torville. I'm going to just read out the synopsis of this because it's quite high concept. So, the most important ingredient of any ritual to make contact with the other side is a powerful outpouring of emotion. To get the attention, let alone help, of a spirit, god, demon, etc., one has to be ready to pay them in an amount of emotion rarely seen in a single lifetime. This enormous price meant very few throughout history were ever heard, and all matters concerning the other side were dismissed as superstition. Then the advent of the internet connected billions of strangers, and this price was trivialized. This is a game where you play summoners, regular people whose smartphones have been connected to this other side, allowing them to call upon the power of arcane avatars by crowdsourcing emotion. It forgoes dice or cards in favor of the semi-randomness of a social media feed. It suggests Twitter or Tumblr, and explores how we curate our online experiences. This is something I'm very personally interested in. Apart from the telling tales thing, I actually gave up Twitter. I deleted my account, my very long-running account, last month, I think, or the month before. I am increasingly convinced that social media is the great filter, and that further global communication could potentially lead to the actual downfall of our civilization. I'm not exaggerating that. I think maybe we weren't all meant to listen to each other. I'm a bit of a misanthrope, in case you hadn't realized that. So this immediately leapt out at me, and I am a big fan as well, in general, of TTRPGs that do alternatives to dice, right? Back in the day, I've loved games that do cards. I was a big fan of Everway when it first came out. I still am, with its kind of sort of diceless, but with tarot cards to determine some things. I'm a massive fan of the game Amber, which is notoriously completely diceless. And the fact that this substitutes die rolls for it's essentially what's the top tweet on your feed. That's fascinating to me immediately. It's not too long. It's about 20 pages. Create a summoner, call upon avatars, build your setting. There's not a lot to talk about beyond that. I guess there's a slight dearth of information and imagery. It's not really clear what there's this piece of art which is nice, and this, which I presumably the cover, which I also really like. But how it actually necessarily works is something I'm not sure at the moment. But the fundamental principle of it genuinely fascinates me, and I'm really, really interested in it. With the acknowledgement that anything that paints out social media as a cosmic evil, I definitely have a confirmation bias about that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Steve, what do you think of Hellsite?
I saw this one go past again, and I read it, and it scared me, which is probably a good sign. It reminded me, the idea behind it reminds me of, I think, one of the first Charles Stross laundry books, Atrocity Archives. There's a thing in that about sort of harvesting pain to power rituals, which seems similar, and also Good Omens with the twisting the motorway, the M25 into, no, it wasn't there. You know what I mean? Yes,
Yeah,
twisting
yeah,
roads into sigils to power.
yeah.
You know, the
Which is
drip
why,
feed of misery.
yeah, it turns into like fuel, right? Because
Yeah,
the location itself
yeah.
becomes the ritual. Yeah, and in the same way, like this, the website becomes the ritual, which is it's very in a way, it's weirdly retro. This kind of technomancy kind of notion. I always associate it with kind of like 80s, early 90s, kind of like people doing that genre blurring from the start of like cyberpunk in the early 80s through to, you know, weird writers who wear lots of trench coats talking about like chaos magic and how the World Wide Web could do stuff like that. But it has that vibe, but like ratcheted up for 2024, which I definitely appreciate. I can't help but wonder as well, for a hell of a lot of these campaigns, something that's immediately entered my thoughts is like, these would be cool to do a one shot with for the channel. But I
it's only
can't
12
afford
months in a
any of
year,
them.
though. Well,
so you know.
I have backed a few. It has to be said. This month has been somewhat expensive.
If I had the money, I probably would have backed most of these campaigns.
Yeah,
but
there's been a load of great stuff.
It's not there. Yeah, really good. And I can't help but wonder, Hellsite, that could be a really interesting one shot because you could cut to the feed. You know,
again, I'm getting the fear.
Some playing with expectations. You could do some interesting things that would make people maybe not sleep too well. Which obviously is one of my main goals for Telling Tales. All right, there we go. Those have been 4 streams, 6 campaigns each. That's 24 campaigns, some of which are now over, admittedly, from the earlier episodes, that you could back if you want, folks. They've all been fantastic. They've all been wonderful picks. Let's round this off with some lovely usual promo from us. If you wanted to, you would certainly be welcome to let me just get our campaign up. Actually, why the hell not, huh? We should probably do some promo on it. This is what we're doing. This is a campaign for Troika, the indie TTRPG, odd, abstract, surrealist fantasy setting that I'm sure many of you will have heard of. If not, you should check it out. But this is a setting zine that we're producing called The Soft, set on a vast, rambling pillow fort of uncertain origins, a claustrophobic world of cushioned fabric, bound weirdness, and gonzo cosmic horror. It's our first thing like this. I think I say somewhere in this that we do have a collective experience with TTRPGs of over 100 years between us on the team. And I haven't professionally published stuff before, but I've certainly written a hell of a lot of TTRPG things over the last 30 years. So yeah, you know, it's cheap, it's cheerful, it'll be fun no matter what. So if you're interested, you know, check it out. That's all I'm saying. In terms of other stuff, as I said before, if you check down below, there's all our links to our YouTube where all our streams end up, links to here to Twitch if you are watching this on YouTube, links to our social media, our Discord, our Patreon, our merch store, all that delightful stuff. Our schedule at the moment, we're running Warhammer on Mondays, we're running Blade Runner on Wednesdays, and Thursdays was alternating between Wicked Ones and the Big Wet, but we have finished the Big Wet now. We don't have any other games lined up for that at the moment, but we'll find something will be there soon. Other games we've got coming this year, we've got Yellow King, we've got more Call of Cthulhu, we got We Deal in Lead, we've got we do monthly one shots, and March we'll have 2 of those. We'll have a one shot of Troika of the Soft. We'll have a one shot of Dune. I wonder why we picked that in March this year. And then we'll have other one shots coming, including probably some of these campaigns that we've been pointing out. In terms of thanks for recent stuff, thank you to the Logismine for attending and for your subscription. We really appreciate that. Thank you to the recent followers from Stillfleet, Transvala, and long name, Ziggy Tavildo, Ryek Stardust. Thank you very much. and looks like we're going to get mentioned on a stream. Again, this wasn't organized, I assure you. But Thursday, 9 o'clock GMT, Legitimine has a similar show to this, covering other zines. What fantastic idea! And the stuff might get mentioned on that. Again, I should say, if we had arranged this in a sneaky co-promotion way, we'd make it very clear. But it was just basically coincidence. So there we go. Thank you for watching, folks. Doing these streams has been really fun. Change of pace for us, because normally we're all about the actual play. And check out our Twitch and our YouTube for all that stuff. But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to all the creators who have been creating wonderful stuff for us to show. And we will see you soon out there in the world of TTRPGs and Twitch, as usual. Goodbye. Farewell. Goodbye.